My clock says 3 minutes past.
Perfect.
Let's go. Let's start.
Let's get to it.
Right. So good afternoon, everyone. I think everyone's in the afternoon time zone. Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming and attending our webinar today. I'd like to begin firstly with an acknowledgement of country. So I would like to respectfully acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations, which is where I'm meeting from today, or where I'm located today from this for this webinar. And I acknowledge these peoples as the traditional owners of the land in which I am meeting. And I pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging. On behalf of OHBM, we acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the first peoples and traditional owners and custodians of the lands and the waterways on which we live. Firstly, welcome to 2023. It's almost March. Oh my goodness, but welcome everyone to the first OHBM Australia webinar for this year. And here we're looking at or focusing on new beginnings. So whether that's new beginnings in terms of you're beginning a PhD or a graduate research role, or you're starting a new project, you're now a supervisor where you weren't before, you're about to start a new kind of grant project or start a new proposal. We're excited to kind of delve into that and speak to some people that have some experience in some of these roles and experiences. So my name is Beck. I'm Beck Cooper, and my co-host today will be Holly Byrne, and we're both PhD candidates that are also part of the OHBM webinar committee, and we're very pleased to be, we're very pleased to be meeting with you all.
Great, thank you so much, Beck. So before we begin, we'd just like to send everybody a quick poll just so we can get an understanding of our audience today and who's present. And it just means that we can ensure our panel discusses the topics most relevant to everyone who's here. So we'll just pop that into the chat below. And if you could please fill that out as and when you can. We'll also be hosting a live Q&A session during today's session. So please be sure to pop your questions in the chat for our panelists throughout the webinar. Aha, I can see it.
Excellent. So while you're filling out a very simple 2-question poll, we are also running a survey. As I think Holly mentioned earlier, we're running a survey to gauge a bit about what other webinars we could run throughout the year that could be of interest, in particular where we've floated some ideas where the webinars are a little bit more interactive, or we could do a bit more of a workshop kind of a format as well. So if you've got any ideas or suggestions, please fill out a very quick survey, which I'll also just post into the chat again. And we will endeavour to follow those suggestions there.
Brilliant. So whilst we're just waiting for those responses to come through, we may as well get started. So please join us in welcoming our panelists who will guide our discussion this afternoon. First up, I'd like to introduce Dr. Adil Razi. If you would like to kindly introduce yourself and show everybody the lovely slides that you've prepared today.
Putting me under pressure.
Absolutely.
Welcome. Yes, so thank you. Thanks a lot for the invitation. I'm the only one who has a slide, just because I think I like making slides. So basically what I'm going to do is to quickly, maybe less than 5 minutes, just to tell a bit about who I am and what kind of experiences I have, and what kind of questions that you can possibly ask, and hopefully we can go from there. So a bit of an introduction, the beginnings. So I am actually an electrical engineer with my bachelor's done in Pakistan. Then I moved to, I did my master's in Germany and my PhD in wireless communications in UNSW. So I have been an electrical engineer doing things which I don't do now. I was showing how we transfer information wirelessly between mobile devices. So this is what I was doing until 2012. About 10, 11 years ago, I moved into neurosciences. So that's where I started. So I did finish my PhD in 2012. Towards the end of my PhD, I think that might be a bit of a relevant bit here as well, that I moved to industry. So towards the end of my PhD, I was in Sydney and got an offer to work at a wireless communication company called Broadcom, and started working there. Broadcom is a large international company which develops wireless LAN chips. So they develop these integrated circuit chips that are there in your phones, which you can use to email or browse internet, to connect to the, basically to a wireless router, and then you do the data communication over that. So I was working in that industry. I actually didn't finish my thesis even. I started working in industry, and then after a few months, I realized, oh my God, I thought that I could just finish my thesis writing while I'm working in industry. So, I was on yeah. So I started this job and then realized that's not going to happen. So I took a break for a month and quickly wrote my thesis, submitted, and then, so that was kind of a panic at that point. So new beginnings, but you have to basically think it through, which I didn't clearly. Anyway, so I did that thing of adventure, working in industry, but I didn't like. I could go into the details of it later on, why I didn't like. It's not that, everyone should be that, should have that experience, but I didn't like it. And I moved back into industry, to academia, and actually changed my career from that to computational neuroscience in 2012. I now, I'm a lab head, an associate professor working computational neuroscience. In between, when I started doing computational neuroscience, I did about 6 years of postdoc. So it was a completely new beginnings for me in 2012. Although I had a PhD, I had working experience in industry. I again started as a graduate student, really from the, so although it was like a 6 years postdoc, I usually tell that it was a 4 years graduate student and as a student, and then 2 years as a postdoc, really. So it was 4 + 2 again for me. And then I moved to Australia again in 2018. I did my postdoc at University College London in UK, and moved back to Australia, to Monash in 2018. And it's about 4.5, 4 years, 5 years now that I've been here. And we are a computational neuroscience lab, but again, with the new beginning as a new PI, while we do computational work, I was very much into that we could also do a bit more experimental work as well. Doing my postdoc, I never collected a single data set. I was actually maybe once or maybe twice in the scanner myself. I never collected data myself. So I was really a data leech. But then with the new beginnings comes new projects, and I thought we should really branch out and do some experimental work, which we did. Some of it is now published. We did we are now working on a just finished Australia's first and one of the largest studies in psychedelics, and we also did some more work with dish brain system, where we cultured neurons in a dish and put them in a simulated game world, and then we showed that those neurons can play game of Pong. So that was fun, teaching neurons to play games. So we did, yeah, but it was a lot of experimental work there as well. I'm an immigrant. I have lived in several countries. Yeah, I did my bachelor's in Pakistan, as I told you, then moved to Germany for master's for about 2.5, 3 years, then moved back to Pakistan for about a year, thinking about what to do next. Went for PhD in Australia, then had a second guess, like what I'm doing. I'm not very, got bored with wireless comms that I was doing, went back to Pakistan again, started teaching in a small university for about a year, then moved to UCL to UK to start a new career in computational neuroscience, and then about 6 years in the UK and moved back to Australia in 2018, as I said. So quite a few moves. In between, I managed to get married as well, fell in love and all that. So have kids, 3 kids now. And so another aspect, very important aspect of work and life balance that we can also discuss. I'm not sure on this panel anyone has is or at least you look very, very young. I should not make assumptions that you don't have kids, but yeah, we can talk about work and life balance and family as well if you like to. I would stop there then.
Great. Thank you so much for that great introduction, Adil. And I think we could all host an entire webinar just asking about your life experience in all those different countries. But unfortunately, I think that might be outside the scope today. So we'll move on to our next panelist, Dr. Fernanda Ribeiro, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Thank you for having me. Like Adil, but differently. I like making scripts for whenever I have a talk. So here I go. My name is Fernanda, and I have recently finished my PhD on retinotopic mapping of the human visual cortex using geometric deep learning. And I'm now working as a postdoc with Stefan Bowman's team at UQ. I'm originally from Brazil, and besides Australia, I also lived in England. I'm quite used to changing labs, universities, and countries clearly, and even research fields. I've done my bachelor's degree in biophysics back in Brazil, during which I spent a few years working in a medicinal chemistry lab doing experimental work. I also had the opportunity to study 1 year abroad in Nottingham in the UK, where I did an internship in a pharmacology lab funded by the Brazilian government. With those experiences in the wet lab, I concluded that I don't have the dexterity to perform work in the wet lab. So I decided to change field. So after finishing my undergrad, I moved back to my hometown, São Paulo, for my master's degree in neuroscience. And essentially, I did my master's degree on fMRI data analysis. And finally, for my PhD, I decided to move once again, but this time I brought my partner with me. Here in Australia, I did my PhD with Alex Bucket, and I proposed a new deep learning-based model to predict retinotopic maps in the human visual cortex. Now, once again, I find myself working in a new lab. Currently, as part of Stefan's group, I'm working towards having more robust segmentation models for medical imaging. I hope I can share with you I hope I can help you guys to deal with the anxiety of changing research directions. But beyond that, I think I can share some of my struggles and strategies to deal with public speaking, writing, and many other aspects that are part of the PhD journey.
Thank you so much, Fernanda. And I think a lot of us will really appreciate that insight. So thank you. Next up, I'd like to ask Megan to introduce herself, Dr. Megan Campbell. Oh,
did the Zoom thing of being muted, sorry. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for including me on the panel. I feel like I had a little bit of an in because I'm a member of the exec, but I'll still take it as an invitation. And I'm very happy to be able to join this panel and chat about new beginnings. So I'm a postdoctoral research fellow at the University of Newcastle and the Hunter Medical Research Institute. And I started that position at the end of 2019, and with all the COVID situations and stuff, sometimes there was some new project forced upon me because plans didn't pan out. So that was a very kind of interesting start to a postdoc. And I haven't really moved around anywhere near as much as our other panelists, but I have moved from far north Queensland, which is another world. And that's where I grew up and did my undergrad in psychology. And I did an honours project up there that was in that I designed and ran myself, and even did some baby programming for, and that was a psychophysics study. So that was very far removed from what I work on now, and looking at how we perceive biological motion, and went from that kind of very purely behavioral thing and decided I really want to get into the brains, and felt that I needed a master's, which really wasn't necessary, but added to my HECS debt. And I came to Queensland Brain Institute and did a master's there, where I got to do 2 projects. So again, starting small things, but multiple. So I did a TMS study and I did a fMRI study and fell in love with fMRI and stuck with that from there on. And then did my PhD at QBI as well. And I worked on the human mirror neuron system, I guess, as a theme to my thesis, but I was mostly keen on learning as much as I could about fMRI and different ways of analyzing it. And then pairing that paradigm design stuff that I'd sort of been learning about and using since my honours degree, I've moved slowly more into computational approaches, but I'm still kind of a token cogneuro person in a very data-driven lab. So paradigm design is still the thing that I love to get my teeth into, and the part that I love the most about starting a project. Even if we're not reinventing a paradigm, even if we're implementing an established one, there's always something that you have to consider in getting the right measure to do beautiful work with. And I rely on fancy data leeches to help me with the analysis, but I think you do need nice paradigms to be able to get nice data for the fancy data people to help you process. So I'm in the systems neuroscience group now, which was formerly in Brisbane at QIMR, but Michael Breakspear moved his group to Newcastle. And so that's, yeah, we're very multidisciplinary, and in that team I'm running fMRI studies and behavioural studies, and I've had to learn how to supervise a lot more. So I've had at least 2 honours students each year, and developed projects for them to be able to run feasibly within that time frame around COVID. So there was quite a few new beginnings in that period. And yeah, I should have said this at the very beginning, but got confused. I wanted to acknowledge the country that I'm on. I'm taking part in this meeting from a Wabakal country, which is adjoining to the Wurundjeri People's country as well, and that's where the University of Newcastle has a presence. And that I did my previous work in Brisbane on Turrbal land, and before that I had the joy of growing up in the tropics on Yidinji and Jabberkai country. So I've been very lucky to grow up in beautiful countries within the one country of Australia, but not so much travel internationally as our other 2 panelists. Thank you. I think so. Yeah, basically happy to talk about PhD stuff, how to start supervising students and setting up new projects. That's it. Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And I can see from the poll already that there's a few ECRs here, so I think they'll also really appreciate that perspective. And great. So last but not least, so Dr. Kelly Garner.
Hello, thank you for organising this webinar, for having us here. And yeah, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of Gadigal land, where I speak to you from today. So yes, I've had plenty of new beginnings, or I've started lots of new projects, none of which I'm sure are quite finished at all, but I do think that is quite normal within science. So my most recent new beginning is I just took a lectureship here at UNSW. So I'm now starting my own research group, the Control Learning and Transfer Group. So that was a month ago. And so how I got here, so So I completed my PhD in 2014. I was fortunate to be from the UK, traveling in Australia, and managed to find myself in an amazing research environment where I wanted to stay and complete my PhD, where I looked at how expertise changes how the brain represents a task and the impacts that that has on performance. And that involved beginning some rather like large scale neuroimaging projects. And then subsequently to that, after postdocing a bit in Australia, I moved to the UK, to the University of Birmingham for a postdoc there, where I started looking at how experience and expertise impacts our sensory experiences. And then subsequent to that, I applied for a Marie Curie Fellowship, which was to be between Australia and the UK. So that was the next 3 years, during which COVID scuppered the beginnings of many projects, but also forged some interesting new unanticipated paths. And then the very week that that ended, the position came up at UNSW that I applied for. So I can speak to you all about managing 8 years of multiple short-term contracts and moves between countries and what that entails, and also managing, starting in getting through projects over those periods where things are changing all the time. And also happy to speak about how you manage your the life that you carry with you, the places you go through those experiences as well.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that, Kelly. Fantastic. So what we can do now is take a quick look at the results from the poll so you can get a bit of a gauge of our audience today. So hopefully everyone can see that. So it kind of looks like we've mostly got students and ECRs and a few mid-senior career researchers, and we've got lots of people from Victoria, Queensland, and all over Australia. So that's great. Fantastic. So I guess maybe we can get going with our discussion. Beck, would you like to ask the first question?
Yes, for sure. We've got a few questions already prepared, but if you do, if you are an attendee and have a question for any of our panelists, just pop it in the Q&A section, and then we'll bring those up in due time, I guess. Sorry, where do we begin? Where do we begin? Let's start with, let's start with supervision. So, Megan, if you want to jump in first, but then anyone can jump in after that. What is your, I guess, what is your advice for anyone who's supervising for the first time, or who's starting a new supervision relationship this year?
Yeah, the thing I've only learnt to get in my head quite recently is it's not your job to do the study for them, the project for them. And yeah, to kind of gauge early on with your student what their expectations are and what their goals are, and then to tamper your own expectations and goals accordingly. Yeah, I guess I've had the chance to develop some new studies, so that was good because I could sort of involve the student in that decision, which always gets people more engaged, I think, if you have that opportunity. Whereas I think, although it's somewhat easier to just have a project ready that you go, okay, you're going to collect some data and you can pick how you do the literature review, you do kind of benefit, I think, if you have some wiggle room to allow them to put their flavor on it, or even to really influence the way that you develop the study. But especially for an honours project, that is also biting off a lot to chew. So I guess my advice overall is like, learn to take a step back, that it's sort of not all on you. They have to be a student and do the study and do the work. And if they don't follow through with that, even if you're offering all the support you can, it's not your fault. And that, yeah, sort of weighing up the options of how to develop a study that's feasible in the time frame for your students. So if it's a PhD project, obviously it's a lot different to an honours project. And Yeah, and I think it's very rewarding. And I literally got an award last year, so I'll just toot my own horn about that. That I got, an excellence in supervision award, and I think it's my most favourite award that I've ever had. So, I don't know if others want to jump in who've had more experience with PhD level, perhaps, and mine's largely honours students that I've primarily supervised.
I think so kind of expanding on a point that Megan just made, I found when I first started supervising, what a really interesting challenge was, and perhaps Adil can probably speak to this with more expertise than I can, it's a bit like what I imagine parenting to be like, in that you have to learn when to step in and save someone, and you have to learn when to let them make their own mistakes as well. But I think in addition to that, I've started seeing supervision as a real opportunity, because when you work with a student who's coming in, they've got fresh eyes on the subject matter that you've known for a long time. It can actually be a really valuable interaction between the two of you if you can balance that.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, really, I mean, it's about what sort of a student you are supervising. For an honors student, these days honors projects are starting, and I'm doing my meetings with. So what I do is to meet with every honors student in the beginning to gauge what their background is. Some of them could be more comfortable with lots of programming, others are more in less programming, but they could be they would have a lot more to offer in terms of their background in more empirical work or studies, running studies, behavioral studies, or other interests or philosophy. So first figure out what kind of background they have. We usually offer honors projects which we think what needs to be done. I mean, something that me or a senior postdoc in the lab can do in a month or two time, and we know where to start and what kind of outputs we would expect, something that we could do, then we offer that. But that's one way of playing very safe. Other way is this, that you could offer a project which is really a new area that you want to look into, starting from a literature review and then seeing what the gaps are, and so you can build up on that as well. For PhD students, of course, it's more substantial. So you need to have, every lab has few directions that they want to take, but also I think it's very important that the student is really has the passion to drive that direction. So for example, if I can give an example, in our lab, when I started my lab, the first student that we have was someone who wanted to do psychedelics studies. And I had some experience of working in that. I had collaborations, but it was not something that, I was to do myself a lot. But there's a student who is really driven. So we developed this, and then it turned out to be a really good project. So that's an example where you have done some work, you have interest, and then there's someone comes up who is really driven, and it just and now it becomes one of the threads or research direction in the lab. So that's another way of thinking, that when you start a lab, you want to see most of the time is also circumstantial, like what kind of student you get, and then you go from there as well. For postdocs, I think it's more of a thing that usually postdoc comes on a project where you already have a grant. So you have a grant that you have written, you have money which is there to complete a project. So it's a bit more more focused, I think, although, it can vary as well, but usually postdocs are more experienced, they know what to do, they require a little bit less supervision, and usually they are on a certain project. I find it like with the PhD students, you can actually experiment in new directions, while with postdocs, you are more consolidating what you have done previously. But again, there's a wide variety of things that you can do. I would stop here then.
Great, that's so helpful, especially as PhD students hearing it from the other side, how that kind of symbiotic relationship works, because I think a lot of the time PhD students feel a lot of that weight on their shoulders, and it sounds a lot more like a partnership in trying to set those goals moving forward. So that's really helpful. I just wanted to move on to the next question, just because I think a lot of people here will relate, including myself. But the first question is, can anyone speak to developing skills in coming up with your own research ideas independently of your supervisors or research team? This person is nearing the end of their PhD and can't see how they'll ever have their own ideas and not rely on the ideas of their team for research projects.
I think writing the discussion section of your thesis is an excellent period of time where you will realize that you have been thinking about things for several ideas, and that you have a knowledge base and you do have ideas to move forwards. So your experience of assimilating what your research tells you will really put you on the in the direction of what the steps are that you can take next. But I also think it can be very helpful to have a kind of like primary motivating question that drives you, in that, for example, whenever I come to a research area, I'll seek to work out what it is that people in the literature say. So like, what are the key perspectives, rather than what does all the literature say, because that can be overwhelming. And then on the back of that, I always try and ask myself, okay, if I was going to build a brain that did this thing that's under study, what do I need to know? What piece of information would be missing in my like circuit or little model that I'm going to put together? And normally those two things are like, I find them pretty beneficial for pointing to me where there are gaps in the knowledge and corners that you can pry up and start working on and chipping away at.
I have added a link to Tim Barron's advice about starting a lab and finding your own research question. And I agree pretty much whatever he has written there. Basically, I'm still actually looking for a research question, which is really truly mine. So don't feel bad about it, because the bigger the lab that you come from, it's really hard to find your own question as well. So finding a research question that comes from you is hard, because the research question is something that you will then become a big direction, a whole lab that goes in that direction and do it. And it's hard. It's hard. Most of the times that we are doing is more of a incremental work. It's more on filling the gaps, but finding a truly research question that defines your career is a hard one. And it comes only with doing one study and after another study and after another study, running one experiment after another, and slowly you start to see something which is really your own. So I would say that we probably not be too much worried about having a very original thought. And I may at some point maybe could say that there are very few questions which are really original. Most of them are really in some sort of a incremental question being asked.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's true of all science, right? That's the phrase, standing on the shoulders of giants. I think I still would like to know the answer to this question. I still feel like it's a hard job, like you've just said, coming up with something. And I still find the most inspiring instances are casual conversations with fellow nerdy friends who, when you're not at work and maybe there's wine and you can just discuss ideas and things and you go, oh, that's a good one. And if you still remember it the next day, you go, oh, yeah, I'm going to read about that. Then you might just have that idea. And it's kind of good just to stockpile things that sparked your interest, because you might not ever do a study on it, but it's always a good way. And I've definitely gone sort of incrementally and learnt what I don't find interesting anymore and moved away from that, rather than necessarily knowing, because everything's interesting. I find that the problem. When I finished my PhD, sorry, I was like, I could study anything and everything. I could apply to all of these jobs. They look cool. So I don't know if I'll ever have a properly cohesive theme like Kelly has started to develop for hers, but I aspire to that one day.
It took periods of being interested in all things.
Yes, yeah. So,
and enjoying the novelty dopamine along the way until some underlying
something
structure
stuck.
forms. Yeah.
So yeah, and I think as life goes on as well, you get different sources of insight and inspiration, and you meet more and more people. And I think my ethos for a career in science is never to be trying to do it alone. I always want to be working collaboratively. And I'm really lucky in the lab that I'm in that's really encouraged. You're not expected to be a jack of all trades or a one woman show doing all the instruments at once. You should be working with people whose expertise can complement yours. And you learn that way as well. So I think I'll always be trying to work in teams rather than come up with a brilliant, original, completely novel, no one's ever heard of it idea all on my own. I think that's a bit silly.
I'm on Megan's team as well. I think one situation that happened during my PhD was I contacted this professor at Monash about a possible postdoc position, and then he invited me to give a talk to his lab about my work. And then he, made a comment, like asked one thing, and I was like, oh, good point. I will have a look at this. And it turned out to be a very interesting question. And I was very glad that he accepted to be part of that work as well, collaborate on that work. So I think I also agree that, maybe the best ideas come not from one person, but rather multiple people discussing, problems and how to solve that problem.
It's really great. Thanks, everyone. One thing that I found, and I obviously don't have, I'm at the beginning of my career, but I found that I've going to conferences as well and being able to be exposed to lots of different ideas and see what other people's projects has definitely sparked my interest in lots of different areas which are not at all related to my thesis. So I just thought I'd share that as well. I guess another question that I think, I find really relevant is I guess the question of how do you balance, I guess, your current projects and what you're currently working on with the need to kind of prepare for your future self. So thinking about things that you'll do in future or being on committees so that your resume looks good, or thinking about grant writing, which again is kind of future focused. How do you balance kind of working on your present project, but also trying to benefit your future self, if you like, or work for that future kind of goals as well at the same time?
I can give a questionably honest and vulnerable answer to this because I've just been trying to do that. And it is cry sometimes. When you're setting up a new grant and there's lots of deadlines and pressures and everything, and it's all very pie in the sky and doesn't feel like it might happen, and you're also still running all the things that need running. on your current projects, it's a bit overwhelming. It is hard, but it doesn't last forever. And hopefully you're in an environment where you can ask for help, and you're in a team where, again, not doing it all on your own. So yeah, I would very much recommend seeking out positions where you feel like there's a team environment, and that you do have that support from other colleagues when it's all a lot, because it's a lot at that particular time. Grant writing, I'm learning, is a bit of a beast. So it's not to say you can't do it. You will manage, and you will be able to work out what works for you. But I think at certain times you have to just pick a priority, and when it's grant writing season and it's due, you just have to prioritize that. But hopefully you have people who can help you pick up the slack. That's my take on it. Cry and then ask for help.
As a new postdoc, I'm also, I think, in a similar position. I luckily, I don't have to think much about it because my boss does think about it for me. So find a good boss. So like when I started my position, he talked with me about all the things that I had to think of in order to get promoted. And I was like, oh, okay. So it's really, I think it's crucial to have, you know, someone like your supervisor, your boss, that is actually thinking about your career as well, but not only theirs. So this is one thing that is making a big difference for me, I guess. But yeah, it's pretty hard. Like now we have to teach, or having some sort of teaching load, supervising, you know, summer students or honors students, all these things. So to me, it's a little bit hard, like managing my time and their time, multiple projects. But I think you learn as you go. You know, I don't think you guys have to overthink much about this right now, but find a good boss.
Yeah, for sure. That supportive environment, and yeah, a good boss. And also, I think I've been lucky that I've had support to attempt, like, to push myself before, like, beyond what I might have wanted to do, but also had frank and honest discussions about what's missing and what I need to do. So that idea of starting to think a bit bigger picture about your career. I'm the least, like, kind of, I don't know, I think in at maximum 3-year chunks. So it always surprises me when there's something I'm going to do for the future, but it does pay off. And in terms of the practicalities of it, like this, there's a question, I think this is partly from about all the practical sides of starting to do ethics and all of that kind of governance stuff to get a new project actually going while you're still finishing something. And that also often happens from the PhD to postdoc, or between postdocs, where you might be establishing new research with your new position, but you've still got to finish writing maybe the revisions on a paper, or publishing. Like, I didn't finish publishing my PhD chapters until like last year was the last chapter. So there's that overlap. So there's often going to be different kinds of competitions for your time, and being really, seeking out a good position with a good team, because I was supported in doing that work at the same time as my new work. It was because that's good for my career, right? Like, you need to be able to write those papers as well as the new stuff. So it does make it, if you end up in a position where you have no support for that previous work and you're expected to do that on your weekends, that's going to be pretty rough. And if you're not the kind of person who enjoys that, sort of think about that before you commit to a new role. This bit of advice.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And I guess the main aim is not to put too much on yourself, but sometimes it just feels like you can't not to try and succeed. But I guess that kind of fits in pretty well with one of the other questions that we've got in the Q&A, which is quite similar, but it just flips it a little bit. So how would a supervisor actually support students when they're going through difficult times, and, you know, particularly personal difficulties as well? And they've also asked, how could you manage professional boundaries, so keeping that relationship professional while supporting them in those situations?
Yeah, that's a tough one when you have So I think we need to create an environment where people can talk about, for example, mental health problems or any other personal issues. And I think that that's very, very important, that we don't see that that in a professional environment, we cannot talk about if we are going through a difficult time personally. So having this conversation with your boss or with your colleagues, I think it's is important, and we should not. I think it's hard because you're already having a difficult time, and then on top of it thinking that now you have to talk about it with others, and there's a power dynamic. So of course someone who is there is a power imbalance there. So these are difficult, that's why I said it's a tough one, but there is no other way. There is no other way than to discuss it. It's really, you have to shift. You don't have to take all the burden. You have to actually ask for help from your colleagues and someone, if you're a PhD student, I would really say that please talk to your supervisor. And most of the times you would be surprised at how much help you can get and how much a different perspective you can get and help you can receive. So I would definitely 100% be with that PhD students. Don't, because it's a long journey. It's like 3.5, 4 years, and it's not going to be very smooth sailing for many of us, especially when we are recovering from a pandemic which had the pandemic was one thing, but now the long-term effects of it, many in certain ways, it's now showing up. So we need to be. So I would say that for PhD students, it's very important that they talk to their supervisors. I do acknowledge that in certain situations you may not feel a bit more connected, but there could be a secondary supervisor. There could be another person in your department who is, there to help talk. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking about from the supervisor side. So I was very fortunate in that I've already taken Megan's and Fernanda's advice, and I've adopted some amazing mentors over my journey. And, one of the best ones, there was always a very clear demarcation in our meetings where you ask like how the project is, and then there's always and how are you? And do you have what you need? And how are things going? And there was always a space to talk or not. And I think as supervisors, it's really important to show that we have the interest in the whole person who is in the room and not just the work that's being done, because it is as a community and as a collaboration that we work well and happily together, which is what produces better science.
Yeah, I think that's lovely. That notion of just, building it into regular supervision or mentoring. I think in terms of the blur of the question, also had the tone of asking about blurring between personal and professional. I guess you should never feel that you have to disclose more than you want to, but if you need help, you need to at least frame a little bit of what kind of help you need. And it really is an individual kind of personality things as well. Like some students and some supervisors are just both very private people, and it's very separated from work life to work. So I guess you can still have quite a friendship and collegial friendship with a supervisor, even if there is a hierarchy kind of built into the relationship. But obviously, it's just important to still have some degree of separation. Like, they're not your best mate. You can't tell them absolutely everything, and nor should they be telling you too much of their personal life, because that puts a strange element into the relationship. But you can still be friendly and you can still have a warm rapport, Just, yeah, I guess it is a little bit of a balance where you want them to feel comfortable enough, students to feel comfortable enough to speak with a supervisor, but yeah, of course there is a bit of a yeah, a delicate thing there, because if you're overly friendly and that sort of relationship becomes compromised, you know, when things get stressful and you need to say, actually, no, you're not helping me enough and I need this, that, and the other, but you're friends with the person and you have to go and challenge that, then that's actually, you know, maybe difficult. But I think generally, luckily, our system normally has multiple supervisors, as has already been mentioned. So you have co-supervisors to speak to and balance that with. And there's always, every institute, every university has a lot of student services, and they're there for PhD students too, not just undergrads. So if your first point doesn't feel like it can be the supervisor, seek help and advice from those services that might help you figure out how to frame it with your supervisor. Yeah. Don't get drunk with your supervisor at conferences. Keep the drunk students over here and the drunk supervisors over there.
Thanks, Megan. I think we should have another, yeah. I mean, you could do another webinar on things not to do at conferences. Anyway,
That's a webinar series.
Yeah. Everyone's sharing their, or not sharing their conference stories. I guess one quick one, for those who are brand new to the neuroimaging space, or who are supervising new students that are new to this space, what are some ways that you can quickly, not quickly, but how can you learn the basics, or wrap your head around all the different things there are to learn in this area?
Maybe I could speak to this, being in this situation most of the time with the students who come from a different background. For example, I don't know if that's the same question, or maybe we could combine. There's someone who is coming from an engineering or computer science or physics or maths background and wants to do neuroscience. So I think I find this easy because these are the core skills that you can build on. You can pick up quite a lot of background in neuroscience by speaking to your colleagues, going to conferences, reading stuff about it. But it's hard sometimes, most of the times, that if you have a neuroscience background, to pick up new skills in mathematical modeling or computational modeling. So I think it works that way a bit more easier, but I can be biased. I think find a lab where you will, so find something which is complementary to what you already know. So if you have a strong computational background and you want to do computational neuroscience, then find a lab where they will be able to plug the weaknesses that you have. And if you are, for example, a student who is with a background in psychology or in neuroscience, and you want to do computational work, then find a computational neuroscience lab where there are people who have the expertise, who can help you build new skills. There's a more time in PhD, so to do this compared to if you have an honors student, as an honors student, or even in a postdoc. Postdoc again, you can always learn new skills, but usually postdocs come with a project that they want to work on. So I think I find that PhD student in between is the best time where you can actually, and I have highly encouraged people to actually look into, there should be some strengths. Either you have a very strong computational mathematical background, or you have a very strong psychology, neuroscience, clinical, or whatever background you have. So that's your strength. Now try to find someone who can be on the other side, and try to find this partnership where you can learn from each other. And that's where I think the most interesting things happen.
Yeah, so like when I started my PhD, I didn't know much about retinal topic mapping. My supervisor was a specialist in the area. So I think one thing that we have to remind ourselves all the time is that you don't need to know all the things. Like you will learn things on demand. Like, oh, I need to know more about this topic to write about it. Then you go, like chat with people that are already working on it, or email people, just email random people. I do that all the time. And usually people reply and they are very happy to talk about whatever they do. Yeah, so I think to start something new, it doesn't have to be neuroimaging, any area really. It's hard, but you have your supervisor there to guide you through this process. And you'll have, colleagues as well to help you, through this process, postdocs. So I think we have to learn to ask for help, actually, and not just rely on ourselves. We don't have to learn all the things by ourselves. Yeah, so, you don't have to be so harsh with yourself. That's one thing that I learned through my PhD.
Yeah, I really reiterate that point of that you will learn on demand as well. Like you said, like you kind of start thinking, oh gosh, I need to know everything, and you all at once, and it will come as you progress. And yeah, it is definitely important to link up with the expertise that you want to complement yours with, like Adila said as well. And I guess for ways, like kind of tricks and ways of learning the gaps in your knowledge, when you do want to sort of do that self-directed learning, I think there's actually a lot of really great blogs and YouTube channels done by scientists who complement their traditional publications with these awesome web tutorials, or just general kind of blogs and things like that. Like Andy's Brain book and Andy's Brain blog. He's like my favorite. I learned so much, just like even after I'd already had supervision or met with someone about it. Like if I was like, oh crap, I can't remember that. He's got such detailed step-by-step videos. So one day I want to buy that guy a beer. So there's a lot of resources like that. And there's also a lot of people who are trying to find out the same kind of information. And often I remember seeing lots of the time, not on Twitter very often now, but that people would collect in Twitter like little feeds of where to start if I'm trying to learn Bayesian modeling, and then someone will just gather it. So lots of people are in the same boat, and there's someone else who's asked about the same question before, or has the same kind of gap that they're trying to fill. So you don't have to start from scratch. Like there's a lot you can get a surface level or an intro to, and then go, okay, now I'm going to actually pick up the SPM manual and textbook and sit and learn about how Carl Fristed sees the world. But you don't have to start there. You don't have to dive into that. You can pick your area. And yeah, I don't know. And you also, like, I know some people who get really daunted by functional neuroanatomy and like people just pointing at a blob and knowing where it is, or seeing the coordinates and being able to understand the matrix just from numbers on a table. But that comes with time, and it also comes with your niche. So you'll get to learn your little neighborhood or your little network of the brain. And I did in my PhD also do some of those coloring in books for the neuroanatomy. I'm not embarrassed enough, a bit embarrassing, but I'll tell you anyway. So there's creative ways to find ways to fill in the gaps in your knowledge, including coloring in, which is also relaxing.
Thanks.
I've also done the colouring in, just to I can confirm its relaxing nature.
Just adding some resources as well. Like I really love YouTube as well for, tutorials, Coursera, summer schools, Stack Overflow for coding. You don't have to start from scratch.
Definitely. yeah, there was a question in there a bit about, I think, mirror imaging analysis and finding mentors, and that overlaps with this. And I might just add to that, come to Brain Hack. That's how you find people and learn things on that side of the equation. If you want to learn more about the analysis side of things, Brain Hack.
Awesome.
Use Mirror Desk as well.
Just a cheap plug there.
Which you can work on at Brain Hack, just so you know. I think also the additional thing I would say to that is just getting a really good example of what someone has done before that's like what you're doing. So just, you know, getting the code that someone has used to do the analysis, which is like your analysis, and tinkering with that code and just understanding bit by bit what each piece does. Going through that then makes the message on Stack Overflow like a bit more meaningful, because you understand what goes into what. And yeah, remember, you're often learning on two fronts. There's like the conceptual, theoretical learning that you're doing and these questions that you're asking, which are really exciting. And then there's also, well, what does that error message mean? And I think, so one thing one of my mentors has said to me before is like, remember, if you feel like you don't know what you're doing, that means we're on the edge of what you know. And that is exactly where we're supposed to be.
That's poetry. We need that on a t-shirt.
But it's very uncomfortable, I must say.
It is, yes.
And with that, I think that's a wonderful place to finish. Unfortunately, we've surpassed 5 o'clock, or it's past 5 o'clock Melbourne time. I'll just quickly post again the link to our survey if you would like to hear more about this, or if these kinds of questions and topics, or if you want to hear something completely different, please send in your suggestions. We also, I guess I would, to close, ask that you would, I guess, give a Zoom themed applause to our panelists today for sharing their time and expertise. I've certainly learned a lot. We really appreciate your time and sharing your experiences with us as well. This webinar has been recorded, and so we'll be able to share with you. We'll be able to share the recording with you on our YouTube channel, which we just popped a link into the chat to see previous webinars if you like. We'll also keep a document of the other questions that we didn't get to, I guess, answer today, and hopefully we can send them out to the attendees as well, that if there were any questions that were left unanswered. I think that's about all. Thank you everyone for attending today. We had a great, well, I had a great time. Yeah, if anyone has any parting, I guess, parting comments, and then otherwise we'll wrap up and head off home if we're not already home.
Thanks, everyone.
Just thank you.
Great.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you for our next webinar very soon. Thanks again to our panelists for attending, and yeah, for sharing your expertise, and we really appreciate your advice that you've shared with us today.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Thanks.
Goodbye.
Bye.